welcome in a very special guest, the very first guest on the Reid Option podcast. And I consider this man the voice of college football. I grew up idolizing this guy, and it's kind of surreal. I just want to pinch myself that I'm actually talking to him face to face right now. It's Kirk Herbstreit. Kirk, how's everything going today?
Doing good, man. It's an honor to be your first guest. I'm excited to not only have a conversation with you, but look forward to watching your future podcasts.
I definitely appreciate it. And we were talking a little bit pre-show about we actually interacted with each other. And of course, you weren't going to remember it just because you meet thousands of people daily. But just to give you guys a little bit of background, I actually was selected for an award, the All-State Good Works team, back in 2014. And we were given a trip to New Orleans to see the All-State Sugar Bowl, which was between Oklahoma and Alabama. And at a hotel in New Orleans, me and Herbie actually interacted with each other. I still have the picture. I hate that I can't bring it up on my phone. It's on one of those old flip phones back when I had those.
Hey, that's a heck of an honor for you to be able to receive, too. I know you. Yeah. I'm sure you have a great experience, but I'm one of the guys that votes on that every year. Mm-hmm. And you should go through what I go through to try to figure out who should be the top 10 or 12, whether it's, the FCS or FBS. So for you to win that award, that's a major accomplishment.
Definitely, and I appreciate that. But I want to get into your football background a little bit, and I want to rewind all the way back to your childhood. So of course, you're an Ohio native. You're a former Buckeye, but how did you get involved in the game of football?
Well, my dad played at Ohio State. He was a captain, and so I was raised in a family in the middle of Ohio where back in that era in the 70s, a guy named Archie Griffin was, the only two-time Heisman Trophy winner. So you're in the backyard. My dad played and was a captain at Ohio State. I was a brainwashed Buckeye from the time I could walk. And so that's how I was introduced to football, and that's the world I grew up in. We would go up to Ohio Stadium and meet Woody Hayes because my dad had access, being a former player. So after a game, I'd sit on his lap, as a youngster. I remember putting Archie Griffin's helmet on, as a little guy, and just Corny Green, the quarterback. I mean, I was just in awe. I mean, to me, that was like Superman and Batman. I mean, that was like Zeus. I mean, it was like the greatest thing you could ever do is hang out and meet Archie Griffin and Corny Green and those guys in that era. So it became a dream of mine to just one day have a chance to play at Ohio State, and had no idea if that dream would ever come true. There were a lot of trials and tribulations that all of us face, along the way. But was fortunate enough to eventually get an opportunity to go and play at Ohio State.
It's definitely I was looking up your background a little bit, and I'm really glad that you dug into the Ohio State background, and that's the next thing I really want to get into, just because you had a really interesting journey when you were the quarterback at Ohio State. So just shed a little bit of light on that and what it taught you.
Well, Jordan, I think one of the reasons I feel like I can relate, for the job I do covering the high-profile college football world, is I came in as a 5-star, can't-miss prospect. There's a guy named Todd Marinovich. It was a quarterback my high school senior year. He and I were seniors together. And, west of the Rockies, it was Todd Marinovich. It was very different recruiting back in these days. And east of the Rockies, it was me. Could have gone to any school in the country. So when I ended up going to Ohio State, it was, the media and the fans were like, oh, he's going to start for 4 years and lead us to Rose Bowls and all that. And I fell flat on my face. I was an option quarterback. I ran my high school coach flew out to Colorado Springs and visited with Fisher DeBerry. And we ran the true triple option out of the wishbone. And so I was used to coming down the line, reading, the defensive tackle and going down and pitching or keeping it. And our pass game was play action off of that same look. But very rarely was I dropping back. And so I could do that all day. That was my comfort zone. And then I didn't care what style offense Ohio State was running. I was going to Ohio State. I was a very different kind of recruit because of my background with my dad and just my love affair with the Buckeyes. So I was going to Ohio State regardless. And they just hired a guy named John Cooper, who brought a kind of a West Coast passing offense with him. And so my first 2 or 3 years, man, instead of going down the line, I'm going backwards 5 steps and 7 steps. And I was that quarterback that first sign of trouble, if the primary wasn't there, boom, I was gone because I could rely on my athletic ability to shake somebody. And that's what I did all my whole life. That's all that was natural to me. So sitting there patiently in the pocket and working through my progressions was very challenging for me. So that's why I feel like I can really relate to guys that struggle with that, throughout their career, because it's not something you just, oh, okay, sit in the pocket patiently while all this noise is going on around me. No problem. I got it. Like, it doesn't work like that. It takes time to adjust. So eventually my junior year, I started to get my footing a little bit. I was ready to quit after my first 3 years. I was ready to go play baseball or go to another school. My dad wouldn't have that. He wanted me to keep fighting. And so I did. And my junior year, I started to get a little bit more opportunities, made some plays. And then my senior year, I was voted captain like my dad, which was cool, and ended up having a solid senior year, and made a lot of great memories like you playing. I mean, when you get older, you remember the friendships and the silly times on the buses and just hanging out with the fellas. And just, when I see them now, it's not about, we talk about, oh, remember that game. It's just like, we just clown on each other and laugh. And that's the stuff that I think we all miss as athletes and competitors that play team sports. So, but had a great time and learned a lot. And I was a business major. So I was kind of deciding I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I wasn't going to play in the NFL, even though that was a goal of mine. So I had a kind of a fork in the road as a business major. Was I going to go the business route? But I really had something inside me, kind of like you, where I was like, man, I love sports and I would love to do something in sports. I don't know if it was coaching. I don't know if it was broadcasting. Man, I had no idea. And I got into a local radio show, just started to do that. I was making $12,000, no benefits, nothing, having no earthly idea where that would lead. I turned down a lot of lucrative business opportunities with some pharmaceutical and medical sales companies, and Worthington Industries, a big company in Columbus. I turned all those down and just went down this path of broadcasting, having no idea where it would lead.
That's a really interesting journey, just because I think all athletes worry a little bit just because you don't really know what you're going to do after you're done playing that sport. And we all have aspirations of going pro, but we've all seen the NCAA commercial of where there's only a certain or small percentage of where people go on to play professional sports. So you touched on it a little bit, but with your broadcasting career and ESPN and College Game Day, what has it been like just to see that brand grow as you've matured and gotten better in that program?
Going back to when I had a chance to speak with you and the rest of the students and the athletes that were there at that breakfast in New Orleans, and when I talk to any kids, I don't have answers for everybody, but I know what worked for me. And I have 4 boys. I try to talk to my boys about this, and that's follow a passion. If you follow a passion and you have conviction, eventually you're going to end up doing a job that you love. How many people in America can do a job that they love? And if you do something you love, man, you're going to wake up the next morning like you with this podcast and all this scouting that you're doing. You're not working. I mean, they're paying you. They don't pay. I mean, they're paying me at ESPN. I'm not working. I love this. Like, I love doing what I do. And if you can go to bed on a Sunday night and there's another week coming up and you actually look forward to going to work, to me, you can't put a monetary value on that. Like that's a win to me. So I learned that. Luckily, I made that choice. If I would have gone those business routes, I hopefully would have been successful. But man, I don't know if I would have been happy. I just would have been a guy doing my job. Go down this radio path, having no idea the College Game Days on that path. But because I had that conviction and I had that passion, I was look forward every day to going to that radio show and learning and taking calls and having guests on and talking stuff that I loved. Man, one thing led to another. I went from an hour and a half to 3 hours to 4 hours afternoon drive to doing a Sunday night TV show, like a wrap up in the week in sports. And then I got into my foot in the door at ESPN. I started as a sideline reporter on a brand new station called ESPN2. which now is a normal station, but it just had started. And I was doing sideline reporting. I was trying to be the best I could be. I'd never had done that. So I was being a sideline reporter for a year. And then College Game Day, a guy named Craig James just left. It opened up an opportunity to be on the desk with Lee Corso and Chris Fowler. Back then, it was just the two of them and me. And next thing I know, I'm on College Game Day. And I'm like 25, 26. And I'm sitting on the desk at College Game Day. And back then, you got to remember, there wasn't an ACC network, Big Ten network, SEC network, ESPNU. There was no stations. There were not a lot of opportunities out there for guys. And so, man, this was gold. And so I jumped on it, and I went into it. This is a good message, I think, for athletes to get into this. As I told you, my career was okay, wasn't great. If you lived outside of the Big Ten market, you had no idea who I was. Now I'm sitting on the desk of College Game Day, which is a national show. People on the West Coast, people in the Big 12, people in the ACC and the SEC, they have no idea who I am. Rather than being embarrassed about that, I decided I'm going to be the hardest working analyst on television. They might not know my name. They might not know where I played. But hopefully after a few weeks or a season, they're going to be like, man, I don't know who that dude is sitting next to Corso, but he seems kind of plugged in. He seems prepared. He seems to know, he's done his homework, that kind of thing. And honestly, Jordan, this will be my 25th year on the show. I've had some successes along the way, but I look in the mirror and I still see 1996. I still see me trying to be the hardest working analyst. I wasn't like David Pollock. I wasn't a 3-time All-American at Georgia. I'm not Desmond Howard. I didn't win a Heisman Trophy and then turn around and be a Super Bowl MVP. That's not me. So those guys have those accolades, and God bless them for it. And almost anybody you watch on TV on a national level, they have accolades like that. I didn't. And so I use that as a chip on my shoulder, and I use that to motivate me every single day. And as long as I'm in this business, I've won Emmys and all this other stuff. It's like, I appreciate it. Thanks very much. I just put it over there on a shelf and I just get back to work because I don't want to rest on anything. I play broadcasting with a chip on my shoulder, and that gives me, I feel like, an advantage in how I do my job.
That's a really, really significant and inspirational message. But let's talk a little bit about the state of college football. And we talked a little bit pre-show about just the pandemic, COVID-19, and everything that's going on in college football right now. And I'm sure you have plenty of insights of exactly what you guys are going to do this year. But let's just talk about your overall thoughts on what's going on in the landscape of college football, just concerning the pandemic.
Well, just like you, I read a lot of things. I'm fortunate to be able to talk to a lot of the people who are involved in making these decisions. And that's the thing, in the NFL, you have Roger Goodell, and he's going to be the commissioner. He's going to drop the hammer and say, here's what we're doing. Here's our ruling. I've talked with the owners, talked with the NFLPA. Boom, here's what we're going to do. NBA, the same thing. MLB, it took forever, but, they have a commissioner. And they talked with the Players Association, and they finally came up with a 60-game schedule. College football, you have the NCAA, but they really aren't the governing body over college football. And so you have the power conferences along with all the other conferences and all these commissioners, like you and I are doing right now. They're Zooming every day. The landscape is changing daily, almost hourly, because now we're back to another peak. This thing's coming back with vengeance. And so where you're sitting right now versus where I'm sitting right now versus Eugene, Oregon, versus Austin, Texas, versus Norman, Oklahoma, Tallahassee, all over the country, there are different rules that are being adjusted daily. I'm on a vacation visiting my boys, and I saw back in Nashville some new rules about if you go out in public, you got to wear a mask, so, and that just happened, I think, today or yesterday, last night. And so we're still a couple months away. Who knows what's going to happen? So the best way to describe it to fans is, I feel like in talking to a lot of the decision makers, athletic directors and conference commissioners, they're building almost like 4 or 5 contingency plans without being able to have a crystal ball and predict where we'll be in mid-August. I think they're they're just trying to navigate their way through this the best they can. While, like my boys that play at Clemson, they have like 37 cases already. Most are asymptomatic. LSU's got a bunch of cases. Alabama, everywhere, right? Texas. And so I think everyone's just trying to like walk on tiptoes to kind of see where we are, how this is affecting each community, on these campuses, and then just slowly go from there. They're not coming out and saying, boom, here's our declaration, this is what we're doing. They can't. And so they're reacting to the virus, they're reacting to the data, and each state, each city, each county, I think, is coming up with their own set of rules, and these universities have to abide by them. So I think it's very hard as we sit here late June, early July, to really forecast and say this is what they're going to do, because I think it's kind of a moving target, depending on what this virus does.
And you bring up a really interesting point, just because I believe the school name is Bowdoin College. It's a small Division III school in Maine. They've actually canceled all of their fall sports. And a lot of people were saying that really was the first domino to fall. And it may be a trickle-down effect. So is there a situation where you could see a ton of fall sports canceled, maybe a big school here and there? I just don't really know. No, like you said, everybody's tiptoeing their way through this thing. But let's say, just throwing it out there, like, a Clemson cancels all their fall sports. Of course, that's a huge domino that would fall. But is there a situation you could see something like that happening with the pandemic?
Well, I feel like anything's possible with something that has never come through this country or through the world. I think everybody's fearful of what is around the corner. We all know college football. When people say it's a moneymaker, it's not just a moneymaker for people to be greedy about, oh, these coaches need their money, these athletic departments need their money, they're all greedy. It's not that. The women's volleyball team needs football. The men and women's soccer teams need football. The hockey team, the track and field, the baseball, like the athletic departments to function need football. So I really think sometimes in the world we live in, people are portraying it as if, well, it's all about money and it's all about greed. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with survival. And so they're going to do everything they can to try to make it happen. I don't know I think the only way you might see somebody come out in July or August and say, like Bowdoin, was it Bowdoin College?
Yes.
If I think maybe Arizona, their president maybe came out and said something recently where he said, they're asking, are they going to have football? And he said, listen, all I can tell you is if things are in late August are like the way they are right now, I can't envision us playing football. That was his comment. And so I think if they don't have students on campus, like if they say, we're just going to do, the virtual learning, we're not going to have any classes, then you kind of open up the door for, hey, if we're not having students on campus, why are the football players on campus? So that could potentially happen. But I do think even if this thing drags into January or February, I mean, that's like the last contingency, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is you miss the fall. You hope by then there's a vaccine or there's some kind of medication that can help with the symptoms. So there's not this fear of everybody, the combination of people dying and the fact that you can be asymptomatic and give it to somebody without even knowing it. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on that I think make this a scary virus. So if you can lessen that fear with some medicine, then I think you could see college football going all the way out to potentially the winter and spring. That's a last ditch. That's how desperate they would be to play football. Hopefully it won't come to that. I'm still hopeful that, a lot of these schools that are having players that are testing positive, as I said, most are asymptomatic. Hopefully after 14 days, they get cleared, they come back, they've got antibodies, and maybe they're ready to go for the fall. I mean, that would be the perfect scenario, I think, for a lot of the players and a lot of the schools.
Yeah, and you bring up another interesting point of, maybe we see some of these schools stretch the season out all the way into the spring. And I know that's something that's going on, just reading the room and just reading high school sports here in North Carolina, it was Virginia, I believe. What I was reading is that they're actually going to play the season in the spring instead of the fall, excuse me, which I
Yeah.
thought was really interesting. So I don't think that's something that we would see in college football. I think that's something that would be a last ditch effort. But
Yeah.
I want to transition a little bit now to players and really using their platform. We saw it in Oklahoma State with Chuba Hubbard and Mike Gundy down in Oklahoma State. We're seeing it now with Kylan Hill and the flag down in Mississippi. So Marvin Wilson at Florida State and Mike Norvell was another situation that happened. And I'm sure you visit all these college campuses before during your 25 years at ESPN. So you're interacting with these coaches and these players on a weekly basis. But just what's your overall thoughts on these players using their platform now?
I think it's healthy. I think that in football, and you played the game, you know this, you build a community as a football team. You love each other in that locker room, regardless of race or religion or whatever it might be. We're one. We're a group. And I really feel that in order to get what this game has to offer, you need coaches who are part of that one. Not because they're afraid of what a player might threaten them to do. Like if I'm a coach, I want to listen to my players and I want to invest in my players. And I didn't need a movement to do that. Like if a coach is doing his job, to me, he's already plugged in to Jordan Reed. He already knows about your parents. He already knows about your girlfriend and her name and just your life. Because when players feel that, man, my position coach and my coordinator especially, they kind of know who I am as a person. They care about me. They love me. Man, that coach can say and do anything to that player in order to motivate him, in order to get him to buy into the culture. If a coach doesn't do that and he kind of has his head in the sand and he just looks at his players as if, you're a player that can help me get from point A to point B, then that coach isn't going to survive very long. So I think it's a little bit of a slippery slope. The examples you gave were outstanding. I think if I were a coach, I think I would be very careful of not being aware of what's happening. And I want my players to know I'm not doing this because it looks good or it sounds good. I'm doing this because you're like my kids. It's like I have 100 kids and I care about you guys, and stuff that matters to you matters to me. So I think if you're invested in your kids, then your kids are going to respect you and they're going to appreciate what you have to say. With that in mind, I think Nick Saban is a guy that does feel the way that I just said, right? He does invest in his players. But Nick Saban, man, he sets a bar and he creates a culture. He calls it the process. And my fear would be, what if Nick Saban makes a player do something he doesn't want to do, and that player is taken back, or, man, this isn't right, and I'm going to go to Twitter or I'm going to go to wherever, and I'm going to I'm going to try to rally the troops against Coach Saban, and Coach Saban better stop getting us up at 6 a.m. to work out or whatever it is, because we don't think that this is in our best interest. Then a coach has to say, hey, I've created a culture. You decided to come be a part of my culture. I'm the boss of my culture. I really want you to be a part of it, but you have to buy in to my culture. I'm going to make you do some things that you don't think you can mentally or physically do, but we need to go through that for us to become the team that becomes mentally tough, physically tough. So when we get into these games, we're going to be able to win, and we're going to be able to come together as one. So as long as players understand that this sport is demanding, good coaches are going to make you do things as a group that you never imagined you could do, and you're going to get through it, and it's going to make you better, because coaches like to make practices harder than the games. And if they stop doing that because they're fearful that someone's going to go to Twitter and say this coach is being too mean or this coach isn't being fair, that to me is not Right. But what the examples you gave, I think, are great, especially right now with everything going on. I think it's very cool for them to be able to use their voice and be heard.
Absolutely. And of course, I had to save this question for last just because I know you're a big fan of the NCAA football video game and you were one of the main voices on there. And
Yeah.
something that goes, I know you're not a huge Twitter guy, you pop in and out every now and then, but something that goes on in the video game community that I've seen from afar is that there's still people out there that have the PlayStation 3s and they're playing NCAA 14, NCAA 13, and they have what's called these dynasty communities of where they actually have the updated rosters of players in 2020 that are actually on the video game now, just because there wasn't a copy that has been made since 2014, I believe. So, is there a situation where we may see the video game return soon?
I've talked with the folks at EA Sports at length over the years. I think going back to the Ed O'Bannon case, and one of the saddest things about all that is all these players that grew up like you when you were 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old. You played that game. You loved that game. And when you finally got old enough, man, it's like, man, I can relate. Now I'm in college and this is so cool. Or guys that are at Oklahoma are playing the game and they're on the game. Like that was a thrill for those guys, right? And to have that taken away from whatever it's been now, the last 6 years or so, it's just sad, because at the end of the day, I think people would be shocked by what the players would actually receive. You know, if the name, image, and likeness goes through, I think people would be shocked by how little the players would receive. I mean, they might get a free game. You know, that's about the amount of what that might be worth. Maybe it's a little bit more, but it's not a ton. And the players have lost out all these years of being able to play. So I know that there's a lot that goes into it. I know that they're hopeful that they'll continue to go down a path. My best hope would be within the next couple of years that we see a video game. But trust me, EA Sports hears the noise. They hear the demand. They're flattered by that, and they're going to do everything that they can within the rules and the guidelines to be able to provide players and, of course, fans an NCAA video game where they don't have to go all the way back to 14 and,
Right.
and download the current rosters. So let's keep our fingers crossed on that, because I'm just like you. I played that game for hours and
Yeah.
hours back in the day.
Yeah, and I'm sure your sons would love to hear their dad
No,
just talking ball on that
yeah,
once again.
for sure.
Definitely. Herbie, I want to thank you once again, man, for joining the Reid Option podcast. And it was a pleasure catching back up with you for the first time in a long, long time. So once again, thank you so much. And quarterbacks, we're like a huge fraternity, former college quarterbacks. And, you know, like I said, I grew up idolizing you. I've been a big fan of you. And it's just surreal sitting here talking to you now. But once again, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, man. I like I said, it's an honor to come on. I follow you on Twitter. Maybe I'm not tweeting a ton, especially in the off season, but I definitely follow you and your information. I reached out to you, in fact, after some of your stuff that you were doing, telling you you're doing a great job. And remember when I told you my story? There was that fork in the road, and there was business opportunities, and there was this, or there was this other opportunity where I had no idea where it was going to lead, and I wasn't making a whole lot of money, but man, I loved it. I can't wait to see where Jordan Reid is in 5 years and 10 years and 15 years, because you found your passion, man, and you just keep grinding. Don't be that guy that wants to look 15 years down the road. Be that guy that enjoys 2020, 2021, and just slowly growing. And then you can look back in 10 years and be like, holy cow, look what's going on here. So I'm proud of you, man, and wish you all the best.
I really appreciate that. Thanks so much.